He asked me to dress like his dead ex, so I became her. Hi, my name is Laura, and this is the story of how I became the woman my boyfriend couldn't let go of because she was dead. It's hard to explain how something like this starts. Not with fireworks, not with drama, just little things. Suggestions that feel like compliments at first. "You look amazing in red," he said once, after I showed up to dinner in a cherry silk blouse. Red was her favorite color. I blinked. Whose? He laughed almost dismissively. "Oh, just my ex. Never mind." Her name was Allison. He didn't say it often, but when he did, it was with this hushed reverence. Like speaking her name was something sacred. I knew she had passed. An accident, he said. Car crash, 2 years before we met. I told myself I understood. Grief is messy, but grief should not have made me feel like a ghost in my own skin. At first it was small things. He bought me perfume for our 3-month anniversary. I thought it was romantic. Until I found a comment on one of his old Instagram posts. A picture of Allison holding the same bottle. "Miss that scent on you," someone had written. I confronted him. "Isn't it a nice scent?" He shrugged. "You like it, don't you?" I did. But now it felt tainted, like it wasn't for me, like I was being fitted into someone else's mold. Slowly, quietly, things escalated. One night, he asked me to wear red lipstick. "It'll look so good on you," he said, voice low, coaxing. I wore it. And then I saw the old photo album. It had been left open on the coffee table. I didn't mean to snoop, but the image caught my eye. Allison standing on a beach, wind in her dark red hair, laughing at the camera, wearing a red sundress, wearing the exact same lipstick, wearing the exact same earrings he'd just gifted me for my birthday. Something inside me froze. I flipped through more pages, more outfits, more poses. It was like I'd stepped into someone else's timeline, and she had lived it all first. When I confronted him again, his tone shifted. "Why are you making this a thing? I'm trying to help you look your best." "No," I said, voice trembling. "You're trying to recreate her." He scoffed. "That's crazy, you don't even look alike." But he was lying. I knew it. And maybe worse, he didn't even know he was doing it. Or maybe he did. I started to notice the way he looked at me. Not like I was Laura, but like I was almost Allison. Like I was just close enough, but not quite. And that's when I made a choice. If he wanted Allison, I would give him Allison. Every last haunted piece. The first step was subtle. I dyed my hair, just a shade darker. I didn't tell him. He didn't notice immediately. But a few days later, while we were out shopping, he paused mid-conversation and stared. "You did something," he said. "You look, I don't know, just like..." He stopped himself. I smiled. "Like who?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "No one, just beautiful." Liar. He knew. And the scary part? I could see in his eyes. He liked it. The next step was harder. I recreated her Instagram. I used a second phone, created a new profile under a variation of her name. I scoured old posts from friends, reverse searched her digital footprint, gathered images from her friends' tags, birthday photos, vacations, candids, nothing too obvious. I recreated the profile with eerie precision. Then I started uploading. Not everything, just enough. A teaser. And then I followed him. It took him exactly 11 minutes to follow back. I almost laughed. He didn't even question it. He didn't even ask how. He messaged the account at 2:04 a.m. while I was lying in bed next to him. Is this some kind of joke? I didn't reply. I waited 2 more days, then I messaged from the account. "You'll never have me again." He didn't answer immediately, but I saw him looking pale over breakfast the next day, staring at his phone between bites of toast, barely blinking. I knew he was spiraling. I knew him better than he thought, but I wasn't done. Next, I bought the same dress she wore in the photo from that beach, the red sundress. I had it custom made from a seamstress who worked from photos. It was perfect, down to the stitching on the straps. Then I found the song. Apparently, there was one she played all the time. a sad, slow piano piece. Her favorite, he'd once said. It was playing the night they met, he'd told me, years ago. I waited until he was in the shower. I lit candles in the bedroom, dimmed the lights, put on the dress, put on the lipstick, set the perfume, sat by the window. Then I played the song on repeat. When he stepped into the room, still damp from the steam, he stopped in the doorway like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes locked on me. He opened his mouth, closed it. He shook his head like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I tilted my head slowly, just like she did in those videos he used to secretly rewatch. "Hey," I said softly. He backed up into the hallway, and I smiled. They say grief twists people into unrecognizable versions of themselves, but I wasn't the one grieving. I was the one being turned into someone else, molded piece by piece like a doll, made in another woman's image. And her name? Clara. Clara was the ghost that lived between our bedsheets. She wasn't present, but she was everywhere. The scent of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, clung to the pillows Daniel insisted we never replace. Her playlists somehow found their way onto our speakers, echoing down the hallway like whispers from the past. But it wasn't until the night I walked into the living room and found him watching old home videos that I realized I was living in a shrine, not a marriage. He didn't notice me at first. The screen glowed blue across his face as Clara laughed and danced in a summer dress. Her voice rang out from the speakers, and Daniel chuckled softly like it was happening live. "Do you miss her?" I asked, my voice low. He jumped slightly, startled. Then, without turning off the video, he said, "I just, sometimes wish she'd gotten to see what our life could have been." I sat down beside him. "And what about our life?" I asked. He hesitated, then turned to me and smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile you give someone you love. It was the kind of smile you give when someone asks if they look like someone else, and you say yes, just to please them. "It's close," he whispered. "You've made it close." Something inside me cracked, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded, and I made a decision. If he wanted Clara back so badly, I'd give her to him. The next day, I started with my hair. I walked into the salon with a blurry photo I'd found deep in Clara's Facebook albums. Shoulder length, warm auburn, with a soft wave. Not exactly my style, but I made it mine. When I walked through the door that evening, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "You look," he started, then stopped. "I felt like a change," I said casually, hanging up my coat. He couldn't stop staring, and for the first time in weeks, he looked at me like I was real, not some replacement. I was Clara's ghost in a living woman's skin. From then on, every detail became a performance. I bought vintage clothes, delicate blouses, high-waisted skirts, soft knits in pale colors. I studied her poses on Instagram, her laugh, her gestures, how she sat with her knees tucked up on the couch, her fingers curled around mugs. I mimicked everything, and he drank it up. Soon, he was more attentive than ever. Touching my hair in the mornings, brushing my shoulder as I passed. He bought me little things she once loved. A bracelet with tiny charms, her favorite tea, a book she'd always reread. I was winning. Or so I thought. It wasn't enough to just become her. I wanted to know why he couldn't let her go. What made Clara so unforgettable? What did she have that I didn't? That's when I crossed the line. I created a fake Instagram account with her name. It wasn't hard. Her profiles were still public, her photos easy to download. I used a throwaway email. The first post I made was a grainy picture of a beach, captioned only, "Memories never die." Within 20 minutes, Daniel followed the account. I almost dropped my phone. He didn't message right away. But the next morning, I saw it. A DM request. "Daniel, is this some kind of joke? Who's doing this?" I waited a full day before replying. "Clara, fake. Some memories don't stay dead." He left me on read. I expected anger, denial, but he went quiet. Too quiet. That weekend, he canceled our plans, said he had to see a friend. I knew what he was doing. He was spiraling. He thought Clara was back, watching him. I gave him more. The next few posts were more obvious. A photo of a coffee cup with the caption, "You never let me finish my tea." A video clip with no sound, just waves crashing. And then the one that broke him. A selfie of Clara, her real face, her real smile, captioned, "You never got to say goodbye." The night after that post, Daniel came home drunk. I was already in bed. He stood in the doorway for a full minute before speaking. "You know what's crazy?" He slurred. "Sometimes I still hear her voice, like she's in the walls." I stared at him. Maybe she is. He laughed, but it was hollow. "You ever feel like you're being haunted?" he asked. I nodded. Every day. He didn't realize it then, but I had turned the house into a trap. One he walked through blindfolded, desperate for Clara, unaware I was both the ghost and the puppeteer. But I was only getting started. Next block? We'll step into the unraveling, where Daniel's mind starts slipping and I pull every string just tight enough to make him wonder if maybe Clara really is watching. There's a fine line between obsession and devotion. Daniel used to walk that line with a grieving man's limp, but now I was pushing him, hard. The fake Clara account became a living ghost. She posted at dawn, at midnight, always subtle, always just enough to raise the hairs on his neck. A photo of a candle. A caption, "You still owe me one last dance." Daniel began losing sleep. He installed a second lock on the front door, started muttering about coincidences. One night, I saw him scrolling through old messages on his phone, comparing dates, trying to find a crack in reality, trying to reassure himself that Clara really was gone. But he wasn't sure anymore. Because I wasn't just Clara online. I was Clara in the kitchen, Clara in the bedroom, Clara humming that Fleetwood Mac song she loved while folding laundry. Every day I became her a little more, and every day I watched Daniel fall apart. It was a Tuesday when I left the first note. I had scribbled it on pale pink stationery, Clara's favorite color, according to her Instagram, and tucked it under Daniel's pillow. It said, "I never got to wear the red dress." That night, he barely spoke. He stared at the note like it was radioactive, like it might explode if he breathed wrong. The next morning, he was gone before sunrise. By the weekend, he'd started drinking again. Whiskey. Straight. I found a bottle hidden behind the washer. I didn't say a word, just waited for him to crack. He cracked 3 days later. I was in the kitchen, wearing that red dress, the one I knew Clara had worn on her last birthday. I knew because I'd found the picture, pixelated but clear enough. Thin straps, low back, crimson silk. When Daniel walked in, he froze in the doorway. I turned slowly, acting surprised. "What?" I asked, glancing down at myself. He blinked. Where did you get that?" "What, this old thing?" I smiled. "It was on sale. Thought it might be fun." His eyes welled up. He didn't speak, just walked over, kissed my forehead, and left the room. 15 minutes later, I heard the shower running. And sobbing. It was working. But I didn't feel victorious, not really. Something deeper was happening now. Daniel wasn't just mourning Clara, he was afraid of her. He thought she was back. That maybe, somehow, he had willed her into existence. Through guilt, longing, or punishment. So I gave him more. I staged the hallway, hung a photo of Clara and him from years ago, one I'd printed from Facebook, tucked a single dried rose into a vase next to it, lit a candle and let it burn low. When Daniel walked through that hallway after work, he froze. He didn't say anything. That night, he drank himself into silence. Then came the final push, a voicemail. I used a voice modulator, slightly echoing Clara's voice from a video she once posted. I clipped together the audio, cleaned it up with AI, and called Daniel's number from a hidden app. When he answered, the message played, "Daniel, I never left. You did." He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch, curled up with a blanket, shivering. In the morning, I found him kneeling in the hallway in front of the photo I'd hung, whispering something. I leaned down. He was praying. I had taken him to the edge of madness. And maybe that made me cruel. But cruelty wasn't the goal. I wanted him to feel what I had felt. Powerless, invisible, replaced. Because that's what he did to me. He fell in love with someone dead, and instead of letting her go, he tried to rebuild her using my skin. He erased me. So I erased him, slowly. The fake Instagram account made its final post a week later, a photo of a wedding dress. One Daniel had once told me he and Clara picked together, just in case. The caption read, "It was never supposed to be you." He never logged in again after that. He didn't delete the account. He just stopped. Like something inside him finally broke. He stopped asking me to dress up. Stopped talking about vintage clothes, perfumes, old songs. He started therapy. Quietly. I never told him what I did. And he never asked. But sometimes I catch him staring at me. Really staring, and I wonder what he sees. Does he see me? Or does he still see Clara? It doesn't matter now, because I'm not either of them, not anymore. I'm the woman he tried to rewrite, and I'm the woman who rewrote him instead. People often say grief makes you do strange things, but they never talk about what obsession does to the person standing next to it. After the voicemail, after the red dress, after the prayers whispered into the hallway carpet, Daniel wasn't the same. He was still breathing, still eating, still going through the motions, but whatever part of him that had orchestrated my erasure was now frozen. He barely touched me, not in anger, not in lust, just silence. It felt like living with a man-shaped ghost, but I wasn't done. Because while he was unraveling, I was rebuilding. The fake Clara profile still existed, but it went quiet. I didn't need her anymore. Now it was time for Laura. The real Laura, to rise. I dyed my hair back to its original color, tossed the red lipstick. I even threw out the dress. One night, Daniel saw me scrolling Instagram and asked, "What are you looking at?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Divorce lawyers." He laughed, nervous, half joking. "You're kidding." I didn't smile. I just stared. That night, I started sleeping in the guest room. It wasn't a performance. I wasn't playing Clara anymore. I wasn't playing anything. I was letting silence do the work now. Daniel began pacing the house at night. I could hear his footsteps in the hallway. He'd pause outside the guest room door, but never knock. He wanted to ask, wanted to know if I was still punishing him. But he didn't. Because the truth was, I wasn't punishing him anymore. I was just done. 2 weeks later, I got a call from his sister. "Laura," she whispered, "I don't know what's happening to him. He showed up to Mom's place yesterday with flowers and just, started crying. Said he ruined everything." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't go comfort him because the weight of his guilt wasn't mine to lift. But that didn't mean I didn't have one last card to play. I had booked a table at the same restaurant where Daniel took Clara for their last anniversary, the one before the accident. I knew the place. I had studied it. I knew he still passed by it on his way home. So I sat on the outdoor patio that night, facing the street. Alone, wearing my own dress, no red lipstick, no Clara, just me. When Daniel passed by, on foot like he always did, I saw him freeze. He stared at me. And for a moment, he smiled. Then his face collapsed. Because he realized something. I wasn't waiting for him. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was reclaiming the places he'd filled with ghosts. He came home late that night. I was already asleep, on the couch, this time, not the guest bed. He sat down beside me quietly and whispered, "I miss you." I opened my eyes, looked at him, and said, "You never really met me." The next morning, I packed a bag. Not everything, just enough. When he woke up, I was gone. No letter, no note, no voicemail. He had haunted me for long enough. Now it was his turn. People always ask, "Why didn't you just leave?" And maybe they're right to ask. But here's what they don't get. When someone tries to bury you beneath the memory of someone else, you don't walk away quietly. You rise, you haunt them back. With silence. With truth. With a mirror so clear they can't look away. Clara died years ago. But I came back stronger. Not as her. As me. And I hope every time he hears that song, sees that perfume, or walks by that restaurant, he remembers the woman he tried to reshape, and the one who reshaped him. You loved her so much? Fine. Let me show you how much I can be her. Hi, it's Laura again. And this is the part where everything spiraled, except I wasn't the one spinning anymore. I had control. Every move I made now had purpose, precision. The transformation was no longer just an act. It was a weapon. I started studying everything about her Instagram, her blog, her old texts. Yes, I'd gotten into his old cloud backups. I knew her favorite drinks, her skincare routine, even the way she styled her pillows. Then I started bringing her into our home, little by little. The pink mug with the chipped rim, hair in a lavender candle brand she used to rave about. I lit it before he came home from work. I knew he'd smell it, knew it would hit him in the gut like a memory he didn't ask for. And every time he looked slightly haunted, I smiled on the inside. He never mentioned it, but I could tell. He noticed. The next step? Clothes. I went to a vintage shop she once tagged in an old post 3 years before her death. I found a dress almost identical to one she'd worn on her birthday. It was silk, soft pink, delicate. I wore it on a Friday night, made her favorite pasta, played her playlist. He didn't eat much that night, just stared at me and said, "You look beautiful, different." "Do you like it?" I asked. He didn't answer. By now, I wasn't just copying her. I was haunting him with her memory. Then came the real twist. I created a fake Instagram account using her old photos. I deep-faked some of them slightly. Nothing major, just lighting and angles. Just enough to make it seem like she had never left. Like she'd been watching all along. Username @stillhaunting. You first post. A black and white selfie with a caption. You moved on too fast. No hashtags, no locations, just that. I followed him. He followed back. I couldn't believe it. The man who claimed to love me, was secretly following the fake ghost of his dead girlfriend. He didn't tell me. Of course not. But I watched. He liked every photo, every sad caption, every half-revealed memory I posted from her. And then one night he messaged her. "If this is real, please, I need to talk to you." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just grief, this was obsession. He never wanted me. He wanted her. Or the idea of her. And he didn't care who wore the mask as long as he could pretend. So I gave him a final performance. If pretending is what you want, then let's see how deep the illusion goes. I rented a cabin. Not just any cabin. A replica of one she and Noah had visited the year before her death. I'd found photos on her blog. Same wood-burning stove, same plaid blankets, even the same goddamn chipped wooden table. She'd written about how they danced barefoot in the living room, tipsy from cheap red wine. I booked it for a weekend. Told him it was a surprise getaway, something to reconnect. He agreed, almost too quickly. When we arrived, he stood in the doorway like he'd seen a ghost. I watched his throat move as he swallowed, his eyes scanning the room. He didn't speak for a long moment, and then he whispered, "She loved this place." I tilted my head. "Who?" I asked, sweet as poison. He looked at me like a deer in headlights. I didn't press. I just smiled and said, "Let's open the wine." I wore the exact outfit from one of the cabin photos I'd studied, down to the mismatched socks. I even painted my nails the same color. He noticed. I could feel his eyes scanning my every move, like he was replaying something in his head. We danced. And when I say we danced, I mean I made sure the music was her playlist, the movements were her rhythm, and the way I touched him matched every photo, every caption, every damn memory he was clinging to. Then I whispered the pet name she used to call him. His breath hitched. "Stop," he said. I froze. He stepped back. "You're not her." I smiled. "No, I'm not," I said. "But you don't care, do you?" And that's when I pulled out my phone. I showed him the messages, the ones he sent to her fake Instagram, the likes, the comments, the confessions, the desperation. He looked like he was going to throw up. "She's dead," I said. "You couldn't accept it. So you used me as a stand-in, a canvas to paint her back to life." He started to stammer. I didn't wait. I pulled up the blog I'd written. Yes, I had written it, every post, every memory, every detail of this journey. A blog called Becoming Her, anonymous but real. Raw. It had already gained traction, and I hit publish. The world would read it. Our friends, his family, everyone. He begged me to stop. I didn't. "You didn't want a wife," I said. "You wanted a ghost." He begged me to stop, but I wasn't done. Not until he finally saw what he'd become. The blog post exploded. Within hours, strangers were commenting. Women, men, therapists, survivors of emotional manipulation. They didn't know it was me, of course. I'd scrubbed names and kept everything anonymous, but they knew him. People always do. The man who builds you up just to break you into the image of someone else. That night in the cabin, Noah didn't sleep. He sat curled up on the couch while I packed my things. He didn't speak when I walked past him, didn't stop me when I took my keys and opened the door. I didn't even look back. But 2 days later, he did something I didn't expect. He showed up at my apartment. He looked hollow, shaved, eyes red. "I'm sorry," he said, standing in the doorway like a boy who lost his mother. "I don't know who I am without her." And I believed him. That was the worst part. I believed his grief. I believed his loneliness, but I couldn't trust him anymore. Not after turning me into a shadow of someone I never agreed to be. "You could have loved me," I said. "I know." "You chose a ghost." "I know." We stood in silence, no hugs, no dramatic ending, just two people who pretended too long, one who lied and one who let it happen. I closed the door, blocked his number, deleted the blog a week later. I didn't need validation. I didn't need likes or applause. I needed freedom, and I got it. For months, I traveled and cut my hair short, threw out every red lipstick, learned how to cook dishes I loved, started listening to music that wasn't tied to memories, and one day I passed a window and caught my reflection. Short hair, new earrings, a smile that wasn't borrowed from someone else's past. And I said, out loud, "There you are, not her." Me. I thought becoming her would make him love me. Instead, it made me love myself enough to leave. A few months after it all ended, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. A real letter. Envelope, handwriting, postmarked from his hometown. It was from Noah's mother. She said she'd found my blog, that she knew it was about her son. She apologized. Apparently, I wasn't the first, or the second. Noah had a pattern, dating women who reminded him of Emily, molding them into her shadow, then discarding them when they started asking questions. One even got engaged to him. He gave her Emily's ring. She gave it back when she realized what he was doing. The mother wrote, "He never let go of her, but he also never allowed her to rest." That line hit me like a brick. He didn't just haunt himself with her memory. He haunted her too, turned her into some fictional character who lived in every new relationship he had. He never loved Emily as she was, just as he never loved me as I was. And in that moment, I felt pity for him. Not anger, not vengeance, just pure, exhausted pity. He lost 2 women, one to tragedy and one to truth. And both were gone. I burned the letter, not out of spite, but closure. Some flames aren't about destruction. Some are about cleansing. I eventually moved to a different city, took a job in publishing, started writing again. Not blogs about pain, but short stories. Fiction. Stories where women weren't defined by the men who broke them, but by how they rebuilt themselves after. And sometimes I get messages from strangers, women who read those stories and say, "This felt like my life." They don't know me. Not really. But somehow, we all share the same scars. Sometimes, when I'm walking alone at night, I imagine running into Noah again. What I'd say, what I'd do. But I think the silence says more than words ever could. Because the best revenge? It's not pretending to be her. It's becoming me. Louder, freer, and finally, real. He asked me to dress like his dead ex, so I became her. And then I became someone he'd never recognize again. Free. Hi again. My name is Laura, and this was the story of how I almost lost myself trying to be someone else until I realized I was never the problem. The real twist, I wasn't the replacement. He was. He replaced therapy with fantasy. He replaced closure with manipulation. He replaced her with me and then tried to erase me too. There's something horrifying about being loved like someone else. Not for your laugh, but because it sounds like hers. Not for how you hold a mug, but because she did the same. Not for your body, but for the ghost it contains. But here's what I learned. You can't compete with a memory. You can't win against grief that someone refuses to release, and you sure as hell shouldn't have to become a ghost to feel seen. I used to think becoming her would make him happy. Now I know. Becoming me is what made me whole. Noah never apologized. He never reached out again after I moved out. But one of our mutual friends sent me a photo a few weeks ago. He's dating someone new. She has red hair. Same perfume I used when I became Emily. She's already wearing his hoodie in the photo. My stomach didn't twist. I didn't cry. I just stared at the photo and thought, some people don't grow, they recycle. And maybe he'll keep recycling until one day someone refuses to play the role he casts. But that's no longer my burden. If you're listening to this and you feel like you're becoming a version of yourself to fit someone else's grief, standards, fantasies, please know this. You are not a character in their story. You are the author of your own. Let them grieve what they lost. You celebrate what you still have. Yourself. Your truth. Your voice. This was my story. And if it resonates with you, maybe it's a sign that you're ready to write your own. My name is Laura, and this was the story of how I almost became someone else. Until I realized being me was more than enough.